I'm resident of Collinwood, Jules Sage, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray and my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to talk about The Prisoner. Really interesting episode here. Don't forsake me. So there's a bit of a body swap, if you will, or at least mentally. So Patrick McGowan is rarely in this episode. Wasn't he off filming something, guys?
Was it Ice Station Zebra? Was this?
Yes, it was.
Okay. That's amazing that really only one episode was compromised by filming such an epic movie.
Yeah, it's and it's funny too because the script, there's a different version that was revised without McGowan's. As this script was as a revision that did not have McGowan's approval, and Mark Stein had left at this time as well. So
who was minding the store? Was it Lou Gray? Did he? Wow. And this is what happened.
Yeah.
I'm like, he wind up on the moon and it explode, and he's out there with Martin Landau for the next 2 years.
I really enjoyed the actor who they swapped him with. He really carries this episode very well.
I mean, they cast it well as essentially a pretty fanciful Danger Man episode. It works.
Yeah.
And the punchline, I think, it's, we find out some interesting things in this episode. We find out that he's been gone for a year. So it gives us a place in, an exact chronological marker. And I think this was a really good episode to team up with It's Your Funeral.
Yeah. Because
in both of them, it doesn't really have to do with escape, although he escapes. Sort of. It has to do with something larger. And I like that. And to me, if the show had somehow gotten McGowan's agreement to, have a second season or something, I think this is the kind of episode that we would have seen a lot more. I think it would have sort of reverted back to almost a standard espionage show, going out of the village, and maybe every other episode, or every third episode is about him trying to escape, and it would be all this other stuff, because you just can't tell that same story week after week after week, for years.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite scene from this episode?
I like the handwriting comparison moment, and the doctor's reaction, the performance of that actor in that moment when he realizes it's John Drake, when he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and yet he's in awe of the fact that it also works.
Yeah. Gordon?
I kind of like the end, when the end credits start rolling, because I really did not like this episode. I think there's some good scenes, The fiance works. The number six, Nigel Stock, who's the actor who plays number 6, works. The rest of the script, the rest of the episode, I'm like, this is just not coming together. It's like the writer had enough time. And the other thing I liked about it was the idea that because they can switch minds, they don't have to worry about, they can just invade each other and spy on each other without consequence.
Yeah.
Because the same guy who wrote this wrote The Chimes of Big Ben.
Oh.
And you can tell that, there's no one with this rewrite. I don't know where this came from, because I think there's some great. The first third is pretty good, but the rest is just, it's a slog. I get where he was going, but it feels like, it feels like a draft. It feels like a draft that leads to the final rather than. It feels like it doesn't feel like a revision. It feels like an initial draft.
Yeah, I can see that.
What's something you guys would have changed about this episode?
maybe we didn't need to have a 17th episode. I mean, I at its core, I don't know. I would have made it make more sense or be more interesting in that middle part, or have the character of Janet, I don't know, more important to him. That she kind of vanishes about midway through the episode, and there's no reverberation. I think maybe the proof of this episode would have been in subsequent episodes had they revisited this revelation about Drake's, emotional life outside of this.
Yeah, I think if I had to change one thing about this episode that wasn't just getting rid of it entirely, I might have gotten a better number 2, because this one is just kind of there.
Yeah. And it's a disposable character treated disposably in this episode.
Right.
I think here's some good things I noticed about this episode too. The good and bad. I noticed how cold his potential father-in-law is toward him. I haven't seen a man this cold since Joshua Collins. I mean, he's pretty cold toward him. I mean, I get it. He's his boss too, but he does tell his daughter, who McGowan's character, I guess, is supposed to be engaged or married to, he tells her, no, I haven't put him on assignment, and I shouldn't even be telling you that, which that I like, because you're sort of getting a peek behind the spy curtain a bit, because the daughter's pressuring her dad. So he does cave a little bit, but then when number 6 comes in the room and it's not McGowan's body, he's telling him all this personal information. And he goes, you could have just cracked under hypnosis or whatever kind of drug, because we have drugs nowadays that we can use to do that. I like the conversation. I like the chemistry between all the actors in this episode, and the actress. I do agree, the woman, they do make her feel important at first, but then she just, a bit, but then she just goes away. I'm thinking, I agree with you both there. She should have had because it felt like she was going to have a bigger part. When you're watching this episode, even from my standpoint, it's like, wait, it felt like there was supposed to be more here, but then there wasn't.
Yeah, and that's why, because there's the original version of the script, I think there's probably stuff that got cut out, because this script does feel like there's some huge chunks missing. It feels like there's huge chunks missing. So it feels you either streamline it and expand on the whole home part, because that would be like the mind switch thing should be almost the secondary plot. Yeah. Even though that's his mission. You've got, because I think the suggestion, at least my read on the episode, is that the whole spy thing is supposed to be reminiscent of The Village. The
word village pops up several times in the episode.
Yeah. So it's supposed to have that resonance. And I think developing the fact that this is and number 6, there's a great temptation. Yeah, I'm in somebody else's body, but I could get out of here.
Yeah.
In theory. I just think that it kind of overplays that the let's get this body swap in way too long. And it feels very much like, do we do this or do we do that? I mean, the writer himself even said he took what was a poorly written script and turned it into a slightly different yet poorly written script. So,
should this have been maybe a 2-part episode? No.
It's Your Funeral should have been a 2-part episode, because you've got an hour and a half of Darren Nesbitt, and then the assassin plot at the end of part 2. That's your 2-part episode.
Am I the only one in this podcast who liked this episode? Yeah.
It didn't shoot my brother or something like that, or steal my lunch money. I don't hate it. on some deep moral level, it's still a prisoner episode. It's
and it's easy to fall into the trap of, if you it's kind of a personal pet peeve of mine. If I say something, I don't care for something or something's weak, there's always that one person, and I'm not saying it's usual, but it's like but I like it. And it's like, you can actually like something that doesn't.
Right, I know.
I mean, there are actual podcasts that deal with bad movies. And it's like, these are basically just unemployed stand-up comedians trashing films. They wish there were Joel Hodgson or Mike T. Nelson, or even my good friend Michael Albright, who has his own movie riffing gig. But I think that it falls apart at the end. It doesn't really come together.
I think the fact that by the end of this, them getting the guy who created this very system that they're using to come to the village, it feels like they got what they wanted, but then he somehow tricks them by going into the guy's body number 6 was in and then leaving, and then number 6 is back in his body, and it's just like, okay.
Well, here's the thing. In the original script, the Seltzman, the guy who does the mind thing, right, he says, I can reverse it, but I need a third mind in order to kind of regulate the process, which makes a lot more sense, because then he's the third guy and he can do that mind switch. Otherwise, you're looking at it and there's not even all he really does is like hold his little Nintendo Wii. And
this is all, something that's been scientifically established. Normally the part would be played by Dame Judith Anderson, right, performing the Faltor Pan ceremony from Star Trek 3, which is exactly what's going on here. I choose the danger.
What did you got? They get some shots in London, and everything looked good outside the village. I like how they take it outside the village for this episode. What did you guys think of the scenery?
Stock footage safari.
Mm-hmm. And especially since when Nigel Stock's driving the car and you see far shots, they don't bother substituting him. It's all Patrick McGowan. Yeah. But really, London looks good in this episode.
Yeah, it does. I really enjoyed how they looked, how it was shot. I like the road drive sequences. Again, I'm a sucker for fast cars in shows or movies. With the overall episode, what do you guys give it?
A 2 or a 3. I mean, it's so it's so weird that I almost think it's unfair to pan it on the basis of a prisoner episode, because it's not almost really a prisoner episode. So I think you have to reserve, a real pan issue, bedpan perhaps, for an episode that plays by all of the prisoner rules and still is lousy. This one has the virtue of breaking those rules, and so it becomes another thing. That's my first blush on it.
I'll give it a 2.
I'm going to give it a 6.5. I enjoyed this episode more than you guys did. I think where they hit, I like the beginning, because the guy that they bring in, Nigel, he's doubting number 6, and even number 2 says don't underestimate him. He's very smart. He's the one who we've been trying to break and can't. And if you had never watched The Prisoner or never watched any of the episodes, it's a bit of a reminder of what number 6 has done to them too. He's been a menace to them as much as they've been to him, which I like.
What he's done to the upholstery,
right? And so when they do this whole mind swap thing, they're stressing the importance of it. And he, like you guys say, he's in someone else's body. That I really like. And I like how Nigel carries this episode. they picked a really intelligent actor to play the part.
Right. And what would be cool is if McGowan like decided after Ice Station Zebra, screw this, I'm out of here.
Mhm.
Nigel Stock could have easily taken over that role and done it very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was really good, and I'm surprised they never. I know that I sort of wish they would have found a way to bring him back. I know they don't, but I like his performance in this episode. We do get Patrick McGowan at the beginning of this episode. By the way, here's a question for you guys: when they're carrying McGowan away, it's not McGowan, is it?
Right.
Okay.
It's a stunt double.
Okay. So yeah, for those who've never seen The Prisoner, there's guards that are carrying McGowan's character away, number 6, but it's not McGowan. So for this episode 6.5, I get why you guys don't necessarily like this episode. The end it's a bit much. I will say to that, because this end reminds me of the ending of Jason Takes Manhattan. It's like, why is Jason a kid again? We don't know. But overall, I enjoyed it. I have nothing else to add. Anything? Good.
What's our next one? Because we're almost. I can think of. Are there just 2 left?
There's 3 because we've got the General. No, 4.
Oh, General.
The General,
A,
B, and C, Many Happy Returns, and Girl Who Was Death.
Oh, that's 4.
Yeah. Let me make a suggestion. I think for the next one, let's do the General. And the one after that, A, B, and C. Both have the same number 2.
Oh, yeah.
2. And I think when you watch them in that order, there's a little bit of I think you can see a little bit of maybe a little bit of an arc, and I think they work together in that order. So let's make our next one the General.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
So,
and plus, they have good car insurance. So.
And Buster Keaton is wonderful in it.
Oh yeah,
he's on stunts.
Yeah, and when he's on the train and the wheel, yeah, that's beautiful.
Jewel, have you ever seen that movie?
The General?
The General?
No.
You know what? With you and Butch watching all these Westerns, you should watch that. That's a hell of a
General is free on, it's a silent movie, but it's free on Tubi.
And it's one of the greatest movies ever made. And it's not only a great comedy, I mean great comedy, it's a great action movie.
Well,
and truly he does all his own stunts.
I've heard of Buster Keaton. I know how funny he is.
He's more than funny. I mean, Chaplin's this weird kind of limey commie weirdo, but by sorry to the English, but by gum,
Buster Keaton is a man's man.
Keaton is he's a hardworking Joe. He doesn't like troll for the audience's sympathy like Chaplin. I hate Chaplin. He doesn't want the audience's sympathy. Not that he's a bad guy, but Keaton's characters are very honorable. And
when you talk about the big 3 in terms of silent films, and this is a whole other podcast. You've got Chaplin, Keaton, and Lloyd. Chaplin is all about, look at me, look how wonderful I am, look at, let me get your sympathy, feel sorry for me. Yeah, screw Chaplin, he's an idiot. Keaton is all about the gag, the visual gag. He's all about using it to make it and to really sell the comedy.
And he's about, I'm sorry.
And Lloyd is about character. He does his own kind of physical stunts, but he's also about selling a character throughout a movie.
Yeah, very much so. And with Keaton, Keaton is also all about creating a logical plot from which these comedic situations and ironies organically develop. So nothing ever feels forced. It feels like this kind of inevitable outgrowth of everything that's been going on that just so happens to be funny.
I'll tell you what, when I get done here, I'll watch The General on TV.
Oh, man. Now, keep in mind, it is, an hour and 20 minutes. I mean, it's a... it's a full length movie, but it's Civil War action with a huge train disaster, and it's a really good movie.
My favorite
and I even wrote a short story featuring Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd as fighting a blackmail ring in 1920s Los Angeles. So there you go.
My favorite Western is nearly 3 hours long. I can sit for an hour 20.
Well, it's a matter of knowing that before when you go in. Because I remember when I first saw it, I thought it'd be a 20-minute, like a two-reeler.
No. Well, that's the thing. The difference between like all three of us, we're patient with movies and television shows.
Yeah.
Sure I am.
Whenever I watch The General, I forget that it's an hour and 20 minutes long, because to me it goes by fast.
It really does, and it's a gosh darn good story.
I'll give you guys something to watch for in Halloween 4 if you go and watch it. It's the first Halloween where different people dress up as Michael Myers, and it's in the movie. Donald Pleasance and Sheriff Ben Meeker find Jamie Lloyd and her stepsister out on the street, and suddenly they're surrounded by Michael Myers, or so they think.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. It's a really interesting point in the movie.
The skin shape.
There's only one real Michael Myers in Halloween. But anyway. Guys, really interesting episode. So The General and A, B, and C in that order, right?
Right.
Okay. So when tomorrow's the big Dark Shadows podcast for all of us. Tomorrow night. Saturday I got a Western with Butch. Sunday we're doing the Dark Shadows Daybook. How's Tuesday, guys, for the president?
Tuesday works.
I love it.
Tuesday night, guys. I'll see you then. Have a great night and be safe, guys.
Good night, all.
Good night. Bye.